Okay, well, this week we're going to do a prophecy update. First, let me just give you a short little summary of what happened at the prophecy conference last week up in Minneapolis. They had about 4,000 there Friday night, also 4,000 on Saturday. We had about 1,100 people in churches watching online. So the conference had a great impact after the messages Friday night by Jack Hibbs and Bob Jeffers from First Baptist in Dallas. There were about 200 people that got saved. We know that there were people that got saved online. So the conference had a tremendous impact, and thanks to Jan Markell and everybody for the hosting and putting on just a superb conference. I had an opportunity to, of course, meet with Jack Hibbs a little bit, and Amir and Michelle back in the green room. Essentially what we talked about, I don't really have time to go into it today, but we talked about Benghazi. Michelle had a lot to say about that. And, you know, the Republican committee is under a lot of heat right now because of what they've done in Benghazi. And Michelle Bachmann was very frustrated with the way the Republicans have been conducting themselves and not pursuing certain things. She is a little fireball. She did a little tiny thing. And I walked up to her in the green room, and I said, I wanted to introduce myself, and I said, Michelle, and she turned around, she goes, oh, John Haller, I watch your updates. I love those. So it was kind of a weird experience to have that happen, and that happened a number of times during the conference. So I know people are watching, and I do appreciate that. The discussion in the green room went for the whole lunch hour, and essentially what we talked about was, what's next? What's next? Now, Amir Sarfati, he thinks that Isaiah 17 is next. That's why I included that in the update that I recorded in the hotel room last week. But I'll talk a little bit more about it in the future. There's a lot going on. This week's update was one of the most difficult to prepare that I think I've ever had, just because it's a situation of where do I stop and what do I talk about and what do I not talk about, because everything, I mean, I've said this for years, everything's in play. Okay, everything's in play now. I mean, really, all caps, everything is in play, and I'm yelling it. It's just, the things that I'm seeing in the newspaper, you know, I've always taught and believed this, and I believed it was going to happen, and now that it's all happening all at once, it's still a little bit hard to get your head around it. So today I'm going to call this Canaries in the Coal Mine. And you can see our dead canary there in the birdcage. Remember, the story is that the miners used to take canaries down into the coal mine because if there was carbon monoxide or other odorless gases, the canary would die. So if the canary died, they knew they needed to get out of there. It protected the miners, but, you know, bye-bye canary, I guess. But this week, we see a lot of these incidents, and I'll talk a little bit about what's going on in Israel. The Jews really are, in terms of things going on in the world, they really are the canary in the coal mine, because we know that the things that happen to them eventually happen to the Christians, and vice versa. So when you see things, Christians being persecuted, you know that Jews are going to be persecuted. When you see Jews being persecuted, you know that Christians are going to be persecuted in fairly short order. It's just the way it always works. It's the way it's going to work until the Lord returns. Again, we see this tremendous convergence of events of all these things happening. Now, I want to make a couple comments about, somebody asked me a question on Facebook. Hey, what do you think about CERN? And if you notice, I've not really talked about CERN. There's a lot of speculation about what is going on there in Switzerland, this Large Hadron Collider that is speeding protons to collide with each other at near the speed of light. And I think it's 30 miles, 17 or 30 miles in diameter. It's underground. They have it cooled to a temperature less than outer space. And they run these things through this track and they collide into each other. And supposedly they want to discover how the structure of the universe is structured. I mean, because what quantum physicists have learned over time is that what we think we knew, we don't really know that much about. It's much, much more complicated than we can even imagine. For example, back when Darwin was developing his theory, you know, he thought that the cell was just this kind of goo that did good things, but now we know that there are engines and factories and that type of thing in every cell in your body, and the things that go on are amazing and highly complex. And as they tear apart the atom, they think they've gotten down to the smallest particle, then they find a smaller particle, and it all gets very complex. Now, as I said, there's been a lot of speculation about CERN. I know people are afraid about it. They're concerned about it. I don't think you need to be concerned about it, and I'll explain why in just a moment. If you see in the upper left-hand corner the logo for CERN, it really does have what appear to be stylized 3666s. Now, did somebody do that on purpose? Was it done as a joke just to make people freak out? I don't know, but it is their logo, and it does have what appears to be 666 in it. This is sort of what an internal picture of the Hadron Collider looks like. A lot of people focus on this thing that happens to be outside the CERN building, the statue of Shiva, the Hindu goddess of destruction, the destroyer. So people think that when they fire this thing up and get it up to full speed, which is supposed to happen very soon, it's going to create a black hole, it's going to ruin the universe, or it's going to open a portal through which demons are going to enter the world. This is the speculation that's out there. It's all over the place. And people are afraid about this. So here is my answer to your fears. I know that in Colossians chapter 1, verse 15, we have this promise. It says this, it's talking about Jesus. And it gives us this phenomenal information, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. And then it says this, for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. It's a tremendous statement about Jesus. But then in verse 17 it says this, and he is before all things, and by all things, by him, all things consist. And the word there means hold together. So here's my, I guess, answer to the fears about CERN, that it's going to destroy the universe. Jesus is in control. Hebrews, which we started a while back here on first hour, Jesus is still alive. Jesus is sitting at the right hand of the Father in heaven right now. And so I assume that as long as Jesus is around, the universe is going to hold together. And when it's time for a new heaven and a new earth, Jesus will take care of it. No power, no principality on earth is going to destroy the universe. They may destroy a lot of life. They may destroy countries with nuclear weapons and that type of thing. But we know what? Jesus is coming back to the earth. When he comes back to the earth, there will be people here. And there is tremendous demonic activity going on in the world. I personally think it's increasing. I think it's going to increase, and we know there's some prophecies in Revelation that say it's even going to become greater. They're going to come out of the earth. So does God protect you now? Yes. Will God protect you then if you're around? Yes. If you're a believer, you're sealed, you're going to be protected. And I take great confidence in that Jesus holds everything together. And I don't think Satan or any principality or any power is going to be able to destroy that unless Jesus wants it to happen. So that's my answer. I'm not really that worried about it. Because look, I know whatever happens, what happens? We're with Jesus. You know? We win. So I don't think you need to worry about a lot of this stuff. I know there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of speculation and what's going to happen. But listen, the scientists of the world, the Illuminati, the people behind all the conspiracy theories, and I think there are evil people out there, they're not God. Keep that in mind. And I quit assigning them godlike qualities. They're in the power of the evil one. I get that, okay? But God is in control, and all of this thing is going to unfold. In fact, we ought to be, as we see this thing unfold, we ought to be like Daniel. Remember, Daniel was reading from the scroll of the prophet Jeremiah, and he read that the captivity of the Jewish people was going to be 70 years. So what was Daniel's reaction? Well, he didn't pack his bags and leave town. He was still in Babylon. So what did he do? He got down and prayed and said, God, fulfill your glory. Fulfill prophecy just as you promised to your glory. And that ought to be our prayer as we see all these things that are frankly very troubling happening in the world. Economy, geopolitics, morality, apostasy in the church. We know that it's going, from a human perspective, to get worse, but it all works out to the glory of God, and that's what we got to keep in mind. We know that the church is terrible. We know that, 2 Timothy chapter 3 tells us that there's false teaching in the church. For example, right now, there's a lot of churches that are caving in on the same-sex marriage issue. Well, guess what? It's going to get worse. I know it's hard to believe. It's going to get even worse. You're going to see things, I said this before, it's going to get a little weird. It's going to be strange. But remember who you're grounded in, where your faith lies, where your hope is, because your hope is no matter how you depart this life, whether it's by death, by martyrdom, by starvation, you're going to be with Christ. Or rapture, I forgot the rapture. Any one of those ways, you're out of here, you're with Christ. That is our blessed hope, that we will be with him. So let's look at some things that are going on in the world. I don't have time to go into this. This is a significant development. Central banks all over the world are dumping U.S. treasuries like crazy. This is not good. This is not good. I'm talking in the hundreds of billions of dollars. I think the Fed is buying them back. The Fed announced this week that it wasn't going to raise interest rates, so what happened? The stock market went up. It's an artificial rally. I don't know a rational economist that thinks any of this is good. I saw Ben Bernanke this week was saying that, boy, more people involved in the financial crisis in 2008 should have gone to jail. And to his point, he meant the bankers and the investment banks and that type of people. And I think Ben should join them from the Fed, because a lot of this is what, he's rewriting history. This is the Fed has caused a lot of this. They think they control everything. They think they're smarter than everybody. And eventually, it's going to catch up to them. They've been very clever at how they've done things so far, but they can't do it forever. And how it all plays out, I have no idea. Get some coffee cans, bury it in your backyard. I don't know. Eventually, I think there are going to be problems. The commodity prices are kind of up and down. But most of what I'm going to do this week focuses on the Middle East and just some things there. The religion of peace here, now reports are coming out that it wasn't 700 people that died. It was more like 1,450 people that died. But the reports I'm reading are that this is at the Hajj, when they had a stampede and everybody got crushed and suffocated to death at a choke point. There were about over 2 million people there trying to get to the same place at the same time, which is a recipe for disaster. There have been other disasters in the Hajj. They think this one is the worst one ever in history. And this is despite all the engineers who created these bridges and flows for people and that type of thing. And so there are 1,450 or more dead and hundreds still missing. I also heard that in one report that Saudi Arabia had executed 28 Africans because they thought they had done something wrong at the Hajj. So be careful when you go on the Hajj, I guess, is the warning. Here's a list of some of the people killed. Iran is really irate. They had almost 500 people killed. This may lead to a war between Iran and Saudi Arabia. It's that serious. There's a lot of rhetoric going on back and forth. Well, there's a report this morning of this from Turkey. A bomb blast killed about 80 people.
NATO ally Turkey is reeling after twin bomb blasts exploded during a peace rally today in Ankara, Turkey. As you can imagine from that video, dozens of people were killed, another 200 injured. Ben Hall is following the story from London with more. Ben, any claims of responsibility so far?
None whatsoever, and today those calls for peace were extinguished by these explosions. This was the worst terrorist attack in modern Turkish history, and the death toll continues to rise. Death and chaos ensued as dozens of people were thought to be killed immediately. The attack was aimed at a peace rally, which sought to bring together Kurdish and Turkish interests. But that alliance now seems all but gone. Remember that the US is backing both the Kurds and the Turks in the fight against ISIS, but at the same time, the Turks are bombing Kurdish separatists in the quagmire that is Middle Eastern affairs. Nobody has yet claimed responsibility, but both sides are already blaming each other, dealing yet another blow to unity and ultimately to US policy in the region. At around 10 a.m. local, two suicide bombers walked into the middle of the peace rally in the Turkish capital of Istanbul and detonated their vests, leaving 86 dead and at least 190 wounded. The tactics seem to suggest that radical extremists seeking to disrupt the local peace process between the Kurds and the Turks, but such is the murky nature of the region's politics, all sides are blaming each other. The peace process between the Turkish government and the Kurds has all but collapsed in recent months, leaving the country in turmoil. And the Turks are now close to waging all-out war against the Kurds, and this makes the US job of dealing with ISIS, Assad and Russia a lot harder. Leland.
Ben Hall following it from London. Back to you with any developments. Thanks, Ben.
Well, the most important thing that I think that's going on right now is Russia in Syria. There are many things that could be said about this. Russians launching strikes, I'll talk about that in just a moment. The one thing I think from a prophetic standpoint that you should take away from all of this is that for the first time in history, Russia's really actively involved in combat in the Middle East. This has never happened before. Now, we've talked a lot in Scripture. Is Russia part of Ezekiel 38:39? I happen to think it's part of it. I thought for years that part of the reason that they're brought down in is because they have an Islam problem in Russia. They want to get back the Central Asian Islamic republics, the Stan republics as we refer to them, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, those countries. And what better way for the Russians to get on the good side of the Muslims than to say, hey, we'll help you take out Israel. And so now here they are projecting power in Syria, in the Middle East. The attacks that they're doing, they've launched cruise missiles from their ships that flew across Iran and Iraq and hit targets in Syria. NATO is sort of wringing its hands as to what to do. And I think Putin's reaction was, to NATO's concerns, is, who are you guys? I mean, what are you going to do about it? And Russia is masters at deception. I don't know if I said it here or in the update I did last week from the hotel. The Persians invented chess. The Russians mastered it. We play checkers. And that's why we're at a disadvantage. Our geopolitical strategists are playing checkers when Putin is playing chess. And all of these things are playing out in that heartland area, in the rimland that we've talked about a lot. The geopolitical reality of what is going on is that this is a very significant area of the world. NATO's questioning they don't even know why Putin's there. Putin is taking the opportunity of the chaos there to launch these strikes. You see these strikes are happening, and in the yellow, the ISIS area here, you see there's no bomb attacks or missile attacks. They're all over in the rebel-held areas that were being supported by our government, although I think they had, maybe 30 people that they spent $400 million training as rebels, and it was pretty much a dismal failure. We've withdrawn from that. Here's another picture of some of the Russian military moves as to things that they're doing. You need to know that Afghanistan is in a very tenuous state right now as the Taliban is attacking some of the installations and some of the institutions that we had set up before we effectively withdrew from there. Russia may want to get back in to project its influence into Afghanistan. Now, Russia didn't have a very good experience the last time in Afghanistan. Remember that back during the Carter administration. It really led to a lot of problems. Investors Business Daily had this editorial the other day, a slippery road to world war. Now, a lot of people think we're already in the midst of a world war. It's just confined to one little space on the planet right now, and that it's going to get, there's no way that it can be contained. And eventually it will go worldwide. The other thing that's significant too is that China has brought ships and troops to the Middle East. This is unprecedented in history as well. So there's Russia and China helping Syria, helping Iran. This alliance, you know, Persia and Russia have always been kind of at loggerheads, and now a lot of people say, well, they can't be involved in Ezekiel 38 because Russia and Persia have never really gotten along. They've always kind of kept each other at arm's length, but now here they are helping each other out. So the battle is really ultimately over this piece of real estate in Israel. There are some significant things in Syria. There are pipelines that traverse Syria that people want to control. Somebody had sent me some information some time ago that there were oil deposits in the Golan. This is a picture of the Sea of Galilee, the south here to your right, the Golan Heights there, to the east and northeast of the Sea of Galilee. It's a very fascinating geographic region. It's probably, when you go there, your conclusion is this has to be one of the most militarily strategic places on planet Earth. Because, you know, military always wants to occupy the high ground. So back in the days before Israel took over the Golan in the '67 war, the Syrians used to lob rockets on the kibbutzes and farms that the Israelis had along the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. As those, and so those stopped, of course, when Israel took back the Golan Heights, and it's been a relatively peaceful time, but there's tremendous tension there. The rebel groups, al-Nusra, ISIS are all sort of fighting to get control of the Syrian side of the Golan. Assad's still just trying to control it. And then this week, this announcement makes it even sort of more interesting, is that there were a major shale oil find in the Golan that they say could guarantee Israel's oil supply for years. So what's happening in Israel with this, of course, is the Green parties are all saying, oh, you know, hydrocarbons are the worst thing ever. You know, it's so interesting. This leftism is such a blinding religion for people. So here you have ISIS, you have al-Nusra, you have Assad, you have Russia there, you have Hamas in Gaza, you have what's going on in the West Bank. I'll talk about that in a minute. And so what are the leftists all upset about it? Oh, hydrocarbons are destroying the planet. Okay. And it's really reaching sort of a point of beyond reason with the way this is attached. But so exactly how significant the find is, it's shale oil. We know that if the price of oil stays high enough, that it's worth it to go and get it. But they got to fight the environmental groups. Also, I know the Syrians are going to start making their claim. The Russians are going to say that. A lot of what is behind Russia's move into the Middle East, I believe, is control of natural gas and its transit to Europe. That's Russia's main market through its public entity, Gazprom or whatever it's called. But a lot of those pipelines transverse Ukraine. That's why Ukraine is important strategically to Russia. And they also want to get control of the Islamic oil and gas that's transiting across Syria and other areas to Europe. There's reports now that Iraq is saying, people in Iraq are saying, Russia, please come help us, help us bomb ISIS. And so Russia now is being portrayed as the great protector of the Christian faith and standards. And I have to tell you, I hear people talk about it. They are the masters of deception. You have to keep that in mind, everything you see. And so when you see people saying, Putin is a defender of the Christian faith, it's like, are you really sure about that? I mean, really? So here was a report, too, to show you how Iran is involved, was this report on CNN the other day.
A momentous loss for Iran on the battlefields of Syria. General Hossein Hamdani, a top commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, killed by ISIS, according to an Iranian news agency.
It's significant in that it shows once again the commitment of the Guard Corps to these operations. It's significant because members of the Guard Corps are in harm's way. So that has possible political repercussions back home.
A U.S. intelligence official tells CNN Hamdani's death is a psychological blow to forces in Syria fighting for Bashar al-Assad. For nearly 4 years, Iranian commanders have been deep inside Syrian military operations. Iran admits having advisors on the ground, but denies having any troops in Syria, as some media outlets report. Analysts say Hamdani knew Iran's strategy in Syria from A to Z. He was a right-hand man to General Qasem Soleimani, the shadowy leader of the Revolutionary Guard's elite Quds force. Soleimani, considered the overlord of Iran's campaign to save Assad, is reported to have made a crucial trip to Moscow in July.
I suspect he went up there to confirm all the details of Russia's entrance into the Syrian war.
In addition to helping pull the Russians in, Soleimani and the Iranians have mobilized fighters from Hezbollah, considered a terrorist group by the U.S., to fight ISIS, and have given new life to Assad's decimated army.
This mosaic of forces backed by Iran, Russia, and the Assad regime and Hezbollah, now they are all so much more involved than the United States. This tells us that the Iranians and the Russians will back up Bashar al-Assad to the bitter end. So any notion that they're going to cut Assad loose somehow as part of a diplomatic agreement is, I think, a pipe dream.
But for Iran, it's starting to come with a heavy price tag.
We see the funeral announcements all the time of Guard members who are perishing in Syria. So the losses for the Guard Corps are increasing.
And with Hossein Hamdani's death, at least 3 top Iranian generals have now been killed in the fight against ISIS. A U.S. intelligence official tells us Iran's expanding role in this conflict is going to put more Iranian lives at risk to support a failed dictator, something this intelligence official says Russia should keep in mind as well.
And there's a report, too, that what's involved here, there's a website I think you should check out, or a man you should try to follow. His name is Mark Langfan. He's a attorney. I believe he's Jewish, and he's saying that the reason that Putin is there is to essentially rape Syria and the Middle East of the oil, just like Hitler went in and raped Poland. There's a very close similarity to the things that are going on. So marklangfan.com, LANGFAN.com. He has some good information on his website. Now, I want to turn a little bit away from the Middle East, but I think this is connected. This happened last week, a little over a week ago, and I didn't really have time to talk. Well, Frank, I didn't have time to talk about it. I forgot last week when I did my update. I completely forgot about it, and so I wanted to talk about it. This is the website of the United States Department of Justice. And one of the things that's going on here is that Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, who replaced Eric Holder, went to New York, and they had a press conference, and they issued this press release about participating. The United States would now participate in the Strong Cities program. It's probably something that's escaped a lot of people's view. I'm very concerned about it. A lot of people are concerned about it. It essentially appears to be the beginnings of sort of a global police force and behind a New World Order agenda and that type of thing. Now, I'm not certain of all this, but so I just did some digging into the websites. I'd share this. This is what the press release says. To counter violent extremism, we need determined action at all levels of governance. To succeed, we must coordinate our efforts and cooperate across borders. The Strong Cities Network will enable cities across the globe pool our resources, knowledge, and best practices together, and thus leave us standing stronger in the fight against one of the greatest threats to modern society. The mayor of Montreal said this is with great conviction that Montreal has agreed to join the Strong Cities Network founders. This global network is designed to build on community-based approaches to address violent extremism, promote openness and vigilance, and expand upon local initiatives like Montreal's mayor's International Observatory on Living Together. So in a way, it sort of sounds like the law enforcement side of the 2030 agenda goals, where they really want to control everything through the UN. I think these are very significant developments. We know that we've been fighting some of the planned communities aspect of Agenda 21 for a lot of years. They've moved from Agenda 21 over to this Agenda 2030. They essentially want to control everything. And part of this, what concerns me, is the way they use violent extremism and who they lump together and who they make equivalent to other people. So I found out that there was so it says, well, check out on the website, here's the Strong Cities Initiative, inspiring local resilience on a global scale. And then they go about us, and it says this: the Strong Cities Network is the first global network of cities and other subnational entities working together to build social cohesion and resilience to prevent violent extremism in all its forms. It's the overbroad, and we know, do you ever think, has a government ever overreached before? I mean, do we have any examples maybe in current United States history of people overreaching? The Strong Cities Network provides a global platform to support local authorities to systematically share lessons learned, pool resources, and build a community that can mobilize local action on a global scale. And then it says this: the risk of violent extremism across racial, ideological, political, and religious motivations is a concern for families, communities, and governments. Local authorities, it's always about the children. Local authorities, including city, municipal, and town, and I'm not against children, by the way. I was once myself. Must work closely with civil society to identify and address the methods used by violent extremists to recruit, radicalize, and mobilize targeted individuals. And so then it talks about this cooperation. But look at the second bullet point down there. It says this: a recognition that violent extremism and prevention efforts should not be associated with any particular religion, nationality, or group. And so what I did was I clicked on the videos there that you can watch, and almost every one of them was a person of a particular religion talking about peace. I'll let you guess which religion that was. And these were police officers and head of police forces in places like Birmingham, England, talking about, we just shouldn't blame Islam for all of this. Everybody else is just as bad. And so this is where it's going. So, for example, so then they tell you, well, go look at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. It's always dialogue, this Hegelian, let's just sit down and talk about it and come to a consensus. What happens in those is the truth gets eviscerated. So here it says the Institute for Strategic Dialogue helps us turn research into action in the fight against extremism. And one of the examples they use, by the way, they do not use Islamic terrorism as an example in the photos there, far-right extremism. And so they have videos there, far-right extremism, policing the far right that they talk about. Then they use an example of some conferences that they had, and one of these is the Club of Three working session that took place in Europe in May 2014 in London. And look at what the Club of Three working session determined. The Club of Three working session took place just after the European parliamentary elections, when right-leaning groups had pretty good, because people in Europe are concerned about immigration from Syria and other countries in the Middle East for a real reason. They see what's going on in their community. Took place just after the European parliamentary elections and focused on what conclusions can be drawn from the results, as well as how this could reshape the future of Europe and its institutions. It examined the following issues. One, voter disenchantment with Europe and the growth of the protest vote, particularly with regards to the election outcome in France and the UK. Now listen, for these people, they don't like the fact that they're being challenged. They are all about control. This is not about, it is about unity. It's about unity if you agree with me. And I'm all for unity if you agree with me. But that's not what they're about. They're about, and I'm just telling you, I know I sound like I don't talk about conspiracy theories here a lot because you sound a little bit crazy at some point. But I'm just telling you, this is what's going on a massive scale. And now our government, our Attorney General, has bought into this agenda. And this will be implemented in the United States, mark my words. Maybe it can be slowed down. I don't know. The next president, if he or she wants to, will have a lot of stuff to undo, and I don't know at this point whether it's possible to undo it. The institutional reforms which could address economic and political lethargy, the economic prospects for European business, trade, and finance. As usual with the Club of Three, this event was held on the Chatham House rule and had a distinguished group of individuals, of course, and so they're experts at everything. And so here's another example. Old threat, new approach, tackling far-right extremism, report launch. So then I went over to another website that they linked there called the Free Initiative. Choose the approach, and I'll just run through these real crazy. So the first one they talk about is legal and repressive measures. How do we control far-right extremism? Not the thing that is everybody knows is the major problem in the world, that's causing all these problems in the Middle East, that's causing people to blow themselves up in Ankara, Turkey today, and kill dozens and dozens of people and injure a couple, 200-300 more. So they say we'll do banning, we have the right to limit protest, hate crime legislation. How do you think this is all going to go for people like us that want to speak out about this stuff? Empowering victim groups, takedowns, anti-discrimination law. This is like a left-wing agenda dream. So the next one is public order management, diversion, reclaiming public spaces. In other words, stop the protests. Let's get these people under control. We don't want to see them. Smart policing and demonstration management, prevention, talk about building purpose, diversion, education, capacity, because they're only this way because they're ignorant. They need to be educated. And I don't think I'm overstating the case here. Deterrence, maintaining a visible presence, emphasizing consequences, increasing social costs. In other words, make it more expensive for them to engage in their protests because we're going to charge them with crimes and we're going to make them do things. Exit programs so we can help these people leave this thing because it's like an addiction. They need treatment. They need help. So we'll have group interventions. That's one there. We have online engagement because all these crazy people are talking to each other on Facebook and everything now. The next one is information and public communications. And then the last one is training and capacity building. So there's all these things that are sort of leading to a conclusion as to who are right-wing extremists. And I'm going to tell you that some other things I found this week. And listen, this literally took me 20 minutes to pull up this morning. Literally 20 minutes to just click on the links and you find out exactly this whole thing unfolds in front of you. Now, until a week ago, I'd never heard it, and I'm pretty sure nobody else around here had heard of it either. And it doesn't make me smarter. I just happened to catch this report. I think Breitbart reported it. And so I just had time this morning to click on it. In 20 minutes, this whole thing unfolded, and I'm concerned about it because we say some pretty hard things here about certain things. But this was an article from Salon. It was also picked up in Huffington Post a few months ago. And it says this: our end-of-the-world obsession is killing us. Climate denial and the apocalypse, GOP style. And one article that I think was on the Huffington Post had a picture of Michelle Bachmann. And by the way, I know she gets a lot of bad press. That lady is the real deal. She really is. She had a couple of her daughters there, one of her natural daughters and one of her foster daughters. My understanding is they had 5 children of their own, and during the course of their marriage, they've raised 23 foster children. So, you know, you meet somebody like this and you get a little bit, man, I'm wasting my life, you know, I'm not really doing anything. So, but, so the thing is that, so one of the ways they determine whether you're this extremism is if you're a climate denier. And there are even people that say that they want to charge people with a crime that are climate deniers. I can't remember who said it this week. It was where the guy said it. It's a quote. You must be a right-wing extremist and, of course, prone to violence. Now, there was a conference. I don't remember the name of the conference. I didn't have time to look it up. Barely had time to get this thing done in the back here this morning. But they had I'm going to play a clip of a man. This was, I think this was just a month or so ago, this conference. This man is a professor at a teacher at Boston University, the Institute for the Study of Muslim Societies. And his name is Michael Pregel, I don't know how you say it. I'm going to play a clip of him speaking at this conference, and I want you to see how he connects the dots. Because this is the dominant view of these people in government that are putting together these programs. This is how they think. Now, he obviously didn't take speech 101, but you need to listen to him because I think what he says is illuminating. So here he is.
There's been some interesting discussion recently on the open embrace of apocalypticism by American politicians on the right wing. The first and most obvious explanation is that even when politicians do not make explicitly religious appeals, right, they're playing to the heavily millenarian belief system embraced by Christian evangelicals.
You can kind of see the Huffington Post article here in the background. You see Michelle Bachmann, I think, there in the photograph. So he's talking about right-wing extremism, views of the apocalypse, and what needs to be done about this.
Including religious Zionism. Basically, we support the state of Israel, so Jesus will come back. Promoting this worldview also has the felicitous benefit of exploiting a kind of Manichaean belief in a world dominated by the struggle between good and evil, which has clear political utility.
Him saying that there's evil and good in the world is just a political construct. It doesn't really exist. It's just what politicians use to gain power. Well, guess what? There really is evil in the world, and there really is good in the world. But when you engage in, I mean, he sounds like a guy who's pastoring an emergent church in some respects. We really, you know, there's nothing you can really know. This is all part of what I've been talking about is this, it's called critical theory. It has a philosophical base to it, but essentially they tear down everything and they don't put anything in its place. And what results in its place is control and chaos. It's a plan. So here we go.
This is especially beneficial, and I would underscore this, it's especially beneficial for an opposition group, right? Like, therefore, the Tea Party, right? We can clearly liken this to the ideology of ISIS.
Okay, the Tea Party. That's a right-wing extremist group.
That flattens the world, right? Renders the complexities of global politics into a simple struggle between a pure Muslim elite and a host of threats from both insiders and outsiders, right? Now, as the Huffington Post article on the right tidily demonstrates, right? This is the left, Ted Cruz. As the Huffington Post article demonstrates, the end of the world scenarios offered by Christian millenarians also has the advantage of blaming chaos, collapse, and the world's evils on outsiders, right? This is precisely why we see energetic denial of climate change. This is an explanatory mechanism for chaos and collapse and the evils of the world.
So, can I interpret what he says? Right? Okay. He likes the word right, apparently. What he's saying is that how people are bringing about this view of their view of the apocalypse and making it happen. You know, we support Israel just because that'll make the rapture happen. No, we support Israel because God supports Israel. That's, I don't know whether it brings on the rapture. Maybe it does. It's just part of the end time scenario. God's going to do everything on his time plan anyway, right? So, but he's saying is, well, one of the ways they do this is deny climate change. And that just shows how extremist they are.
That forces us to blame ourselves, right? If you embrace the notion that it's climate change that's destroying the world, then we're the problem, right? With our overconsumption, our overpopulation, and our overtaxing of natural resources, right? This is much harder to swallow than the idea of a divinely ordained struggle between good and evil, between us as the righteous favored of God and a diabolical evil that threatens us in the here and now, but must eventually be defeated because it's God's will. I would note quickly that we've heard these statistics, right, about the amazing proportion of people in the Islamic world who believe that they're living in the end times, right, the time of the fitan, and then the Christian evangelicals believe the same thing, the rapture is coming.
So we're the same as the Muslim apocalyptic terrorists. It's there. I'm telling you, this leftism religion is a mind-numbing, blinding thing. It's what the Pope believes. It's what the guy in the office in the White House in Washington believes.
If we're talking about worldviews that predicate a notion of a saved minority, a sinning majority, strict boundaries between insiders and outsiders that must not be crossed, and anticipation of imminent final judgment, ushering in a new era, alongside a radical embrace of violence,
And so now what he's going to turn to as an example, the Israeli settler movement, because they're really bad.
For me, it's a particularly interesting point, the use of scriptural themes and code words. If we're talking about these things, then we have to admit there is a fringe element in contemporary Judaism that is likewise virulently and corrosive and, admittedly, if we want to be honest, abusing scripture, right? There are elements in the Israeli settler movement.
He's a professor of Islamic studies, early Islam. You talk about a guy who's blinded and not a very good public speaker also. He gets a D from me, right?
That clearly subscribe to a worldview like the one I've just described. People like Yitzhak Ginsburg have received some scholarly attention lately, with people like Reuven Firestone and my former colleague at Elon University, Jeffrey Clausen, seriously tackling the problem of what we might call the Jewish jihadist fringe. Again, I think there's this tendency for Western...
You don't believe, this is, I don't, if I was drawing up a caricature cartoon, I don't think I love YouTube. I mean, you can find, they can't hide anymore.
Analysts talk about phenomena in the Islamic world, like ISIS, in terms that pathologize Islam, right? But stepping back to look at this phenomenon of radical jihadism as something that's not exclusively Islamic, but rather emerges in a variety of contexts under specific circumstances, right? This helps us to get beyond constructs like the clash of civilizations, which I think most people would agree is a tired construct, right?
I don't. What was his name? Samuel Huntington doesn't. He wrote a book about it.
Unhelpful, anachronistic, and sometimes even racist, right? I'll leave you with the fascinating images here of an emerging Christian jihadist militia that's formed in support of the Kurdish Peshmerga to defend the homeland of Assyrian Christianity in the north of Iraq.
Okay, so here's what's happened. Here's what he's talking about. There are former military people, very often Christians, who have gone to Nineveh and other places in Kurdish territories to do what? Protect Christians, okay? That sounds like there were a dozen people, Christians, beheaded just the other day. There were women, 2 women, who drove the ISIS people crazy because they prayed while they were being raped. And then they were killed. And then they were hung on crosses. This is happening in our world today. So people go to help those people, and they're Christian jihadists. Do you understand how moronic this thinking is? And I assure you, you could go up through many levels of the university and government, and you would find person after person after person who agrees with this guy.
know about these people, but they're Americans, many of them military vets, seemingly evangelicals, who've immigrated to Iraq. We call that Hijra, by the way. And they've taken up arms to fight.
Muslims call that Hijra. It's a jihad by immigration. It's what you see going on in Europe today. And he's saying a few Christians military people have gone to Syria, they're engaged in the same thing. It's just...
For the ancient Christian homeland, right? More reportage is needed here, but it's unknown, it's admittedly unknown whether these people are motivated by apocalyptic worldview, but the militia is called Blechnausha, which is self-sacrifice in Aramaic and Syriac, and they're clearly fighting a Christian jihad and actively seeking martyrdom. And I point out here, there's two kind of weird elements here, right? This woman who is anonymous, but has been interviewed and is a veteran of U.S. elite special forces. Her patch for the Nineveh campaign is in Syriac, all right? And this guy, whose name is Brett, he's kind of a dude bro, right? Brett and his Glock, he has not one, but 2 tattoos of the suffering, bloody Jesus, right? One.
Can I move on from this guy? I want you to understand that this is how the thinking goes. Now, there was an example of it just yesterday, the 20th anniversary reunion of the Million Man March. I didn't realize this thing happened 20 years ago, the first one. You know who leads it, right? What's his name? Minister Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam. It started off with an Islamic prayer. Then they had some Native American Indians come and say, you know, down with the USA, down with the USA, we're going to take it back. And there were a lot of people there on the mall. You can see the pictures. Then they brought in, and I think this will explain, it's a 3-minute clip, as painful as it is, I think we need to listen to it. This will explain how this kind of goes with the guy in the White House. It is a clip of his former pastor, Jeremiah Wright. Jeremiah should sue to get his name back. The real Jeremiah. Listen to what this man says. This is on the mall in Washington, D.C., on the steps of the Capitol yesterday. Not 5 years ago, not 20 years ago, October 10th, 2015. A Christian.
Assalamu alaikum to the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, to our hosts, to our sisters and brothers. We are grateful to God to be able to be here.
Now, he's going to tie all of this protest to one particular thing. Listen to what it is.
And to speak a word on behalf of Palestinian justice. Those who put this program together just had the Aboriginal people, the original people of this country, on this platform. And that was so powerful for this reason. They came here to remind us of the fact that this was their country before the Europeans decided that their God had given them this country. The same issue is being fought today and has been fought since 1948, and historians were carried back to the 19th century. Biblical historians were carried back to the book of Judges, where the original people, the Palestinians, and please remember, Jesus was a Palestinian. The Palestinian people have had the Europeans come and take their country, ignoring United Nations resolutions after resolution after resolution, over 40 resolutions in illegally occupied territories, as they take the people whose countries it is and make it theirs.
By the way, if anybody wants to keep track of the left-wing cliches that this guy throws out, you should already be up to about 30, so you can count from here.
It's because their God told them that they could have somebody else's country. The youth in Ferguson and the youth in Palestine have united together to remind us that the dots need to be connected. That what Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, has implications for us as we stand beside our Palestinian brothers and sisters who have been done one of the most egregious injustices in the 20th and 21st centuries. Boycott, divestment, and sanction is how we fought nonviolently to bring an end to apartheid in South Africa. Apartheid is going on in Palestine as we sit here. There's an apartheid wall being built twice the size of the Berlin Wall in height, keeping Palestinians off of illegally occupied territories where the Europeans have claimed that land as their own. Dr. Martin Luther King said in 1967 at the Riverside Church, "We are fighting a three-headed demon, and manifestations of that demon have been seen today and are seen not only on this stage but on the world stage with the Native Americans from this country, the Native Americans in Central America, the Native Americans called Mexican in Guatemala, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Haiti, the natives who see foreigners coming in and taking their land." He said we're fighting a three-headed, Dr. King did, a three-headed demon: racism, militarism, and capitalism. Those three-headed demons are what are causing the Palestinians to have a fight just like the fight we're having here, trying to get people to understand that Black lives matters. Palestinians are saying Palestinian lives matters. We stand with you, we support you, we say God bless you. Justice.
And so we move over to the issue that's really going on in Israel right now. And I don't know how long I'll go, I'll finish sometime. I believe this is from the Lebanon paper. Racist Zionist practices flayed as unrest persists. And down here below it says, ruthless killing machines. Israeli security forces harass unarmed Palestinians in the West Bank village of Tukwa, southeast of Bethlehem, taken the other day. It says here in this editorial, we do not know yet if the people of Palestine are at the point of an intifada yet. If they are, it should come as no surprise. An intifada will be mounted even if its cadre of activists knew that it may yield no tangible results, for indeed an intifada is by itself a cleansing, indeed a healing act. At the same time this is going on, we have this massive immigration from the Middle East. And I apologize if these are a little bit out of order, but it's the best I could do. This wave after wave of these immigrants coming. Now the word is that Europe's going to start shipping them back. Nobody knows where. But they're all Islamic refugees. Virtually everyone. There might be a few Christians scattered in there. This is from our Homeland, Department of Homeland Security, talking about, well, we don't really have data to vet the Syrian refugees that are coming to this country. And here was one of the Michael Emmerich under questioning from Senator Jeff Sessions the other day at a hearing in the Senate. Here, just listen to a little bit of this.
Now, Mr. Emmerich, can you name a single computer database outside of maybe some of our very, very small but significantly valuable intelligence databases for Syria that you run a check against? Does Syria have any that you can access?
The government of Syria does not, no, sir.
I'm asking you to talk to the American people. American people are asking you a question. I read what the FBI director said. He said there's no database to check. He suggests there's no way that they can get sufficient information on, implies a substantial majority of these persons. So aren't you left to basically looking at whatever document they produce and conducting an interview?
I can assure the American people that we have a robust series of screening measures here that encompass the wide range of U.S. government resources that involve U.S. law enforcement agencies and intelligence community members, that these processes and these screening measures are constantly reviewed, that we are continuously looking at ways to improve these, that they incorporate both biometric and biographic checks. They incorporate an in-depth interview with a trained U.S. government officer. They involve an additional interview, or inspection rather, when the person presents himself or herself at the U.S. port of entry.
And let's say you have no information. Let's say there's a question. Do you have any ability to send an investigator to Iraq to check and see if the person actually lived on this street, actually had the job he claims to have had?
Sir, if I may.
I was talking to Mr. Emmerich.
Okay.
While we do not have the ability to send an investigator to Syria, we do have resources that we can use to verify various elements of someone's testimony and story.
Like Facebook, I guess, you know. Google, baby. So look, he passed the background check. Enough said, right? Interesting editorial by Ramirez in the Investors Business Daily. Mr. Netanyahu, trust me, I got your back. So what's going on in Israel right now, and I'll close with this, is what many believe is at least the spirit of the Intifada. I have a lot I could say about this. I know I've done some teachings on Ezekiel 35 and 36. I believe this is prophesied in Ezekiel 35 and 36 about people who get very proud about possessing the mountains of Israel. I'll try to cover it a little bit next week if we have time. But this is, I believe, prophesied, that this people group that occupies the nation of Israel, that comes from Edom, from Esau, which is where they trace their lineage to, this is part of what's going on. It talks about these, in Ezekiel 35, about these two people wanting to possess the two nations. The nation of Edom, Palestinians, the nation of Israel, the Jews. And it's this war that's been going on since Esau and Jacob were born. I mean, it started then. And so these poor Palestinian unarmed. Now I want you to look at some of the video that I have here. Here's a video taken in Jerusalem the other day. These unarmed people. Anybody ever get hit by a rock the size of a softball? It can kill you. So this thing that they're doing, here's another thing where they're protesting with the Palestinian clashes there. A couple was stabbed in their car. There have been a number of Palestinians killed. I think there were 6 killed yesterday. The city of Jerusalem was closed off to Palestinians for a day or so. Netanyahu has come out and has said that people should not go up on the Temple Mount if they're a member of the Knesset or a minister because it's too provocative. Now, Caroline Glick had some very direct comments about that. Oh yeah, so that's really great that Jews can't go anywhere, certain places in Jerusalem. And we know that this is coming though. Netanyahu, again, this is the article that he has banned politicians from the Temple Mount.
And members of Knesset from entering the Temple Mount in a move seemingly aimed at reducing recent sky-high tensions between Israelis and Palestinians. The order comes as Israel has suffered from a surge in Palestinian terror attacks against Israelis and violent clashes between security forces and Palestinian rioters in Jerusalem and across the West Bank. Some Jewish politicians have visited the site in recent weeks, including Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel, a reported frequent guest who supports the right of Jews to pray on the Temple Mount, and MK Moti Yogev, who was recently filmed yelling and cursing at a Palestinian woman at the site.
And here's a video of that. He's yelling, why are you letting them in? Why are you letting these Jews in? He's a member of the Knesset in Israel. He's Palestinian, Arab Muslim, and he's a member of the Knesset. That sort of nukes the apartheid argument. Tell them to go out. They can go to hell. This is not their place. This is ours. This is my home. You need to get out of my home. I personally believe that we're in the midst of another intifada. There have been two previously. This will be the third one. I think if you look at Ezekiel 35 and 36, maybe Obadiah, I think you have some picture of what the outcome of that intifada will be. And again, maybe we'll talk about that next week when we have time. I do not think that at this point the government of Israel will tolerate another intifada. They will at some point crush it. And I think that has prophetic implications to it. Maybe even the actual fulfillment of Bible prophecy. In the New York Times today, or the other day, they had this article, weighing proof of temple sites, of the temple site, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Now the Palestinian narrative, well, here's what the article says. Within Jerusalem's holiest site, known as the Temple Mount to Jews and noble sanctuary to Muslims, lies an explosive historical question that cuts to the essence of competing claims to what may be the world's most contested piece of real estate. Do you understand the prophetic implications of those statements? It is saying, guess what? This is the epicenter of disputes in the world. We had people on our on our national capital steps yesterday saying the same thing. This is the defining issue right now. It says this: the question which many books and scholarly treatises have never definitively answered is whether the 37-acre site home to Islam's Sacred Dome of the Rock Shrine and Al-Aqsa Mosque was also the precise location of two ancient Jewish temples, one built on the remains of the other and both long since gone. In recent decades, after the 1967 Arab-Israeli War and the Israeli occupation of East Jerusalem, the site has been administered by a special Islamic religious authority called the Waqf, under Jordanian custodianship. In fact, it is believed that the Hajj al-Husseini, who was appointed as the Waqf in Jerusalem by General Allenby when the British Army defeated the Ottoman Turkish Empire, who went to Germany to learn about how to get rid of the Jewish problem, spent a lot of time with Hitler during World War II, was actually an uncle of Yasser Arafat. The Israeli authorities share security responsibilities with the Waqf and maintain a ban on non-Muslim prayer at the site. But pressure by nationalist religious Jews for access, including some calls for building a new temple, has aggravated Palestinian fears that the Israelis will change the current arrangement, an assertion the Israeli government denies. Many archaeologists agree that the religious body of evidence corroborated by other historical accounts and artifacts that have been recovered from the site or nearby support the narrative that the Dome of the Rock was built on or close to the place where the Jewish temples once stood. The logical thing would be to dig. If you did that, you'd probably cause World War III to break out. It's not even in the realm of possibility, although the Palestinians do that. Now, the Palestinian Hamas leader calls this an intifada. Do we take his word for it? It's interesting about the dispute about the Temple Mount, and I'll close with this. In 1924 and 1925, the Islamic Waqf, this man who was I believe the uncle of Yasser Arafat, an anti-Jew hater, who wanted a Holocaust of the Jews, he fully supported what Hitler was doing, issued a publication called A Brief Guide to Al-Haram al-Sharif, Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. And in it, it shows some pictures of the Temple Mount, and it has a historical sketch. Now, this was 1925. This is before the State of Israel was formed. in 48, but the Jewish Zionists and settlers had started moving into Israel, buying land and that sort of thing. But listen to what the paragraph said. The two principal edifices are the Dome of the Rock on a raised platform in the middle and the Mosque of Al-Aqsa against the south wall. Other buildings, which we shall consider later, lie dotted about here and there. On the left, along the east wall, the double portals of the Golden Gate appear. On every side, trees break the prospect, which lend a peculiar charm to the scene. The site is one of the oldest in the world. Its sanctity dates from the earliest, perhaps from prehistoric times. Its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. This is a Muslim publication in 1925. This too, on the spot, according to the universal belief, on which David built there an altar unto the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. Later it talks about the substructure, down in the middle of the paragraph. It dates, talking about an area called Solomon's Stables. I don't know that Solomon used it, but it's called that. It dates probably as far back as the construction of Solomon's temple. According to Josephus, it was in existence and was used as a place of refuge by the Jews at the time of the conquest of Jerusalem by Titus in the years AD 70. Okay? Even as late as the 50s, the Muslim Wake was saying, this is a historic Jewish site. Now their new publication, Clarifications for Misconceptions, about, the Dome of the Rock and not the Holy of Holies. That the Holy of Holies was never there. It's not the Wailing Wall, it's something else. It's Marwani Prayer Hall, not Solomon's Stables. They built an underground mosque there that accommodates, I hear, up to 30,000 people. It's just part of, the prayer hall is just part of Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's all it is. It's not the Wailing Wall. It goes on. It's not what the Jews say it is, essentially what it says, and it's Al-Aqsa Mosque is there, not the temple. So this is what they do. They change history and rewrite history, and it's all about getting rid of the Jews. So what do we take away from today? It is a momentous time in earth history and prophetic history. I think we're seeing the biblical prophecies unfolding right before our eyes. I tempted to make up a list of biblical prophecies and start checking the boxes. I told you the days of Lot one, I'm checking that one because we're in the days of Lot. Violence filling the earth, that's days of Noah. I'm about there. So what do we need? We need to, as Pastor Steve said in first hour, reorder our lives, live holy lives, share the gospel, because time is very short. People's eternal destinies may be determined very quickly with what's unfolding in front of us. I wish I had it more, but it is a very positive message. We win and we're with Jesus, and that should be our ultimate hope and our guiding principle. God will protect us. He'll use us as he sees fit to his glory. Not ours, but his. So those martyrs glorified, they were praying and saying the name of Jesus when they were beheaded. Drove the ISIS people crazy. Praise the Lord. His glory. So let's pray, and we'll pick this up again next week. Father, just keep us level-headed in these days, not fearful, not driven by the spirit of fear, but by the spirit of power that we have in you through your Holy Spirit. Lord, help us live holy lives, reordered in accordance with your word. Help us to have boldness to share the gospel with anyone. And Lord, we pray that you will teach us how to live the lives that we need to live in this day. Bless us as we go this week. In Jesus' name, amen.